Hello and welcome to this coffee lecture on 6 ethical ways to use AI in your studies. My name is Pierre-Emmanuel Roy and I'm a librarian at the Earth Sciences Library of Freie Universität Berlin. This presentation is aimed at students of Freie Universität Berlin, but will also, I think, be of interest to students of other universities. Before we start, I wanted to point out that Freie Universität published last year guidelines on AI use, and I really encourage you to read them, whether you're a student or an instructor, just to be aware of the official rules around AI. So you should, according to these guidelines, as a student, you should always ask your instructor if you're allowed to use AI, and if so, under which conditions. In most cases, the instructor is ultimately the one who decides what goes and what doesn't. Also, you might be required to indicate in your assignment, for example in footnotes, which AI tools you've used and how exactly. Also, using AI tools that have not explicitly been approved by your instructor is considered deception, according to the guidelines. And finally, your instructor cannot force you to use AI in your assignments. Okay, now back to our main topic. As you'll see in this presentation, you can use AI to find relevant literature, help you understand complex content, create outlines based on real publications, check for typos and grammar mistakes in your texts, mass edit content, any kind of content, and generate weirdly specific images to decorate your PowerPoint presentations. So I'll explain all of these, show examples, recommend free tools you can use, and give you a couple of prompting tips. Okay, finding relevant literature. You can either use AI to get useful keywords for your literature search. For this, you can use ChatGPT or any other chatbot like Perplexity. Perplexity, by the way, is a very good chatbot, similar in many ways to ChatGPT, but which has, in my opinion, many strengths that at least the free version of ChatGPT, which is version 3.5, doesn't have. And you can also have your chatbot give you sources directly. So let's say you're looking for keywords. An example of a prompt you could use with ChatGPT is this here. Here I started with a little context. I said I'm a student of geology looking for literature on how AI can be used to better assess groundwater quality. It's really important to give context before stating your demand, because this context where you explain, among other things, who you are, what you're looking for, really has a big effect on the kind of answer you're going to get. Okay, so my demand is identify 2 or 3 important concepts in my research topic and give me for each one a couple of keywords I can use to find literature in a bibliographic database. And this is the answer ChatGPT gave me. It identified 3 main concepts and gave me for each one many keywords. And what I'd have to do then would be to identify the most relevant keywords out of all of these and use them to find literature in a database like Web of Science or BASE or Google Scholar. And it's so important to find the most relevant literature on your research subject to have the right keywords. So I think it's really worth it just to ask a chatbot like ChatGPT what the relevant keywords are in your case, just to reduce the risk of missing any important keyword. Now let's say you want sources, not just keywords, but sources. This doesn't work with the free version of ChatGPT. If you ask ChatGPT for sources, it'll give you sources, but they'll be totally fake. They'll look authentic. You'll see author names, a paper title, even a link to the paper, but it's all going to be just a hallucination by ChatGPT. But with Perplexity it does work. So here again I started with context. I'm a student of geology. And then I wrote, give me recent peer-reviewed sources that explain in a simple way how to identify and analyze lab errors. Then I gave a couple of keywords and stated that the sources can either be in English or in German. And this is the answer I got. As always with Perplexity, you first get sources. You can click on these. And under the sources, you get a couple of remarks on your research subject. This works pretty well. In my opinion, it's still not good enough, not nearly good enough to replace a true literature search in a bibliographic database, like Web of Science, for example, because Perplexity will give you relevant sources, but they will probably not be the most relevant sources out there. So that's why using bibliographic databases is still really important. Another thing you can do is to use AI to help you understand complex content. You can either ask AI to summarize or explain a text, and there are many tools that can do this: Perplexity, ChatGPT, or more specialized tools like OpenRead, Explain Paper, etc. And in some cases, you can even ask AI to explain a diagram or any other figure that might appear in a scientific paper, for example. So this here is OpenRead. If you upload a paper in OpenRead, a paper in PDF format, this is what you see. On the left, you see the paper. You can scroll down and read it. And on the right, you see different tools that help you understand the paper. And one of these is the Paper Espresso, where different parts, different aspects of the paper are summarized, like the background and context of the paper, the research objectives and hypotheses. It's much more detailed than just an abstract. Another thing you get is the paper Q&A, where you can ask questions about the paper. Here I asked what was meant by bivariate and multivariate results. That's an expression I found in the paper. And I got an answer on that with references, and if I click on these references, I'm led to the relevant parts of the paper that answer, at least in part, the question I asked. And if I didn't understand this answer, I could ask OpenRead to clarify. This, once again, works pretty well. And here's another tip. You can ask Perplexity to explain a figure you found in an online paper. This doesn't work with the free version of ChatGPT, but with Perplexity, it does work in some cases. So the cases, in my experience, where it works is when you click on a figure in an online paper and the figure opens in a new tab. And then what you have to do is to use the URL address of that tab and give it to Perplexity. This is what I did here. Explain this figure, I give it the link, and as always I got a couple of sources. The first source leads to the article where this figure appears, and under the sources I got an answer explaining the figure. There's some interesting information here. It tells me, for example, that this figure is a bar chart. It recognized that correctly, although it's not written anywhere on this web page that the figure is a bar chart. So it's pretty good, but under that Perplexity starts telling me things that are quite obviously false. It tells me, for example, that Italy had over 200 floods when I can see on the figure that it only had 45. So, as always, stay skeptical, double check the information that AI gives you, because AI, unfortunately, is prone to hallucinating. In other words, to giving you fake information. If you don't quite understand a certain figure, it might be worth it just to ask your chatbot what it thinks about it, how it understands it, but as always, you have to stay skeptical. Another thing you can do is to create outlines based on real publications. So here's an example of a prompt you could use with ChatGPT. I'm a student writing a scientific paper abstract. Based on the 3 following examples, what kind of information should I include in my abstract? And then you give your chatbot 3 examples of abstracts you found in online scientific papers. And this is an example of an answer I got. So based on the examples, my abstract should include the following elements: purpose or objective, methodology, approach, key findings, etc. This is a pretty good answer, and using AI to create outlines or list the important elements for each and every part of the text you're writing makes it less likely that you're going to miss an important element in your text. AI also works really well when it comes to checking for typos and grammar mistakes in your texts. So you can either have your chatbot correct your mistakes directly, or, and this would be my recommendation, list your mistakes so you can make the corrections yourself. Here's a prompt you could use. List all typos and grammar mistakes you find in the following text. And this is an example of an answer you could get. And I find that if you have mistakes in your text, chatbots are pretty good at identifying them. It's true, for example, that its should be written without an apostrophe to denote possession, that communicative needs 2 M's, not just 1. But when it comes to the 4th correction here, you can see that sometimes the corrections are a little dubious. Replacing data with data sets doesn't really make the sentence any more clear. it just changes the meaning of the sentence. So this is an example of a correction I probably wouldn't make. And this is why it's good practice to ask your chatbot to list your mistakes so you have a little control over the whole process. By the way, if you're worried about AI using your intellectual property as training data, well, if you use Perplexity in your account, you can just change your settings to avoid that. There's this option here, AI data usage, and if you turn it off, your prompts will not be used as training data, and your intellectual property will remain yours. Another thing you can use AI for is to mass edit content, any kind of content really, but an example would be bibliographic references. Here's an example of a bibliographic reference. This is a reference to a scientific paper, and if you have lots of these and have to, make small, repetitive, relatively simple edits, AI is a great tool for that. And it's much more efficient than doing the edits manually. This is a prompt you could use. Capitalize all surnames in these references and replace the dot with a colon after the publication year. And then you just give your chatbot a whole list of references. Another prompt you could use, but which is much riskier, is this here. Here's a bibliographic reference in my preferred citation style. And then adapt the following bibliographic references to my preferred citation style. And this prompt is a little risky because, in my experience, sometimes important information will be just erased from your references. So this is going to get better with time, but for now, be very cautious with this. And of course, editing your bibliographic references with AI might not be relevant if you use a reference management software like Zotero or EndNote, because these programs do a pretty good job at this, and they're very efficient, and I recommend you use them. But my goal here was just to show you that AI can do pretty precise, pretty consistent edits in any kind of content, not just bibliographic references. And my last tip for today, use AI to generate images to decorate PowerPoint presentations or anything else really. There's lots of tools you can use for this. Stable Diffusion is a great one, probably my favorite right now. Now, AI isn't capable right now of generating maps, for example, or graphs. It's just not precise enough, not nearly precise enough. But for decoration, it's a great tool. So here's an example of a prompt you could use with Crayon or any other tool. I asked here for a watercolor painting of, and this is just the first idea that came to my mind, of a blue bear dancing on the top of a mountain in a winter night. And it's a good idea to specify the kind of aesthetic you're looking for. Here I asked for a watercolor painting. I could have also asked for a black and white photo or an oil painting. That would have also worked. And here's what I got. And using the same prompt with Stable Diffusion, here's what I got. And here's another example, a pixel art illustration of a student holding a globe in his hand, sitting on a beach lounge chair. And this is the image I got, which is once again very convincing, except perhaps for the right leg of the student, which is in a bizarre angle. But there's often these, small issues with AI-generated images. But most of the time, it's more than good enough. And that was all for today. So thank you very much for your attention. Have a look at our website, the Earth Sciences Library website. We offer lots of coffee lectures on various topics, so you might well find a coffee lecture topic that's of interest to you. And I hope to see you soon. So have a great day.